Welcome everyone to the Council meeting for the 31st of January 2023, which I now declare open. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public gallery who have joined us this evening, as well as those watching at home from on the internet. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent mode during the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders, past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. Councillors, I've not received any apologies and we've got a full suite of councillors here this evening. Item 3 is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on the 13th of December 2022 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest on item 12.1 on the agenda for items disclosed to the CEO in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any others? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a general interest conflict with item 10.3 on the agenda for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other conflicts to declare? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd also like to declare a general conflict of interest in item 10.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Nation.
Mayor, I've got a general conflict of interest in 10.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing. Just confirming the CEO did receive that in writing. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I'll also declare a general conflict of interest on item 12.1 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO. On to item 5, presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? I'll start off. I'd like to reflect on the 5th annual Bunjil Maroon healing ceremony held in Queen's Park on the 26th of January, where members of council and the community were invited to learn about and experience what the day means to our traditional owners. We were fortunate enough to hear an acknowledgement of history by Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung elder Auntie Diane Kerr, experience a traditional smoking ceremony by her grandson, hear a personal story on strength and resilience from the women's Essendon Footy Club player Courtney Ugle, as well as enjoy a performance by David Arden and his band. Thanks to the council staff and traditional owners for their efforts in bringing this important event to life in our community. It's also a fantastic day generally with our citizenship ceremony, where we welcomed, I believe, 124 new citizens, and councillors around the table know how special a day that really is for everyone. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us at the event, including fellow councillors, staff, the Honourable Bill Shorten MP and Honourable Ben Carroll MP. And I'd also like to congratulate residents who are on this year's Australia Day Honours list, in no order in particular. Mr David Andrew Turnbull for service to local government administration, Mr Ron Robert Stobaus for service to athletics, Professor Tissa Wijeratne for service to medicine as a neurologist, Dr Denise Ann Goodwin for service to the community through a range of organisations, Ms Jennifer Margaret Roberts for outstanding public service in policy and program delivery, particularly in the areas of justice and corrections, Professor Graham John Litchkey for significant service to medicine as a haematologist and medical research, and Ms Marianne Little for significant service to aged care and to community health. Councillors, do we have any other presentations? If not, I will move on to item 6, petitions and joint letters. Councillors, do I have any petitions or joint letters this evening? If not, we will move on to item 7, public question time. We have now come to public question time, and we've received 5 pre-submitted questions this evening. For any submitter present tonight, please note that after reading your pre-submitted question, there's no opportunity to ask further questions. And question 1 and 2 are from Peter Robinson, who has indicated he will not be present, and so I will read his words on his behalf. Question 1 is, why has MVCC reduced Australia Day celebrations to basically nothing over the past few years? Who made this decision? And I'll refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Peter. Through the Mayor, Council has not changed the way in which it recognises Australia Day. Consistent with the previous years, Council held a citizenship ceremony and a hailing ceremony on the day. Every Australia Day, our nation welcomes its newest citizens in celebrations and ceremonies across the country. As usual, Moonee Valley City Council hosted a citizenship ceremony on Thursday, 26 January, to welcome our newest citizens. The ceremony was held at the Clocktail Centre in Moonee Ponds. Council also hosted a hailing ceremony on 26 January to respectfully acknowledge the pain and suffering experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. In partnership with Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung elders, the hailing ceremony, called Banjo's Marong, meaning Banjo's Cry, was held on Thursday, 26 January at Queen's Park, Moonee Ponds. The event is an opportunity for community members, including our new citizens, to learn about and experience what the day means to our traditional custodians, and will include an acknowledgement of history by a Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung elder. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And the second question, also from Peter in his words, are why are MVCC ratepayers providing funds to build a religious facility at the Flemington Flats? How much money has been budgeted for this facility, and how will the ongoing costs of this facility be financed? I refer to CEO Helen Swee to respond.
Thank you, Peter. Through the Mayor, there is no religious facility being built by Council anywhere in the municipality. The Gerwin Flemington Hub is currently under construction in Debney's Park, Flemington. This community hub replaces the much-loved Flemington Community Centre that served the local community for over 60 years. The Gerwin Community Hub will be a vibrant, welcoming, and flexible centre with activity and program rooms, family facilities, creative spaces, consulting rooms, and sports change room and recreational facilities, as well as plenty of spaces to sit, meet friends, and relax. For prospective users from the private sector, government, non-profit, and learning institutions, the hub offers outstanding accessibility, modular spaces, and digital functionality, a short distance from Melbourne's CBD. Council has allocated $32.32 million to the construction of Flemington Hub and Debney's Park precinct. As part of this allocation, Council was successful in receiving a $5 million grant from the Victoria State Government, which will contribute to the outdoor sport and recreation infrastructure and sporting components of the hub. The ongoing cost of the operation of the hub will be considered as part of Council's budgeting process for its 2023-24 financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is from Sam Rajapaksa, who has indicated they will also not be present to read out their question. So in Sam's words, in a previous meeting it was moved the zebra crossing on Mount Alexander / Montgomery Street will be erected near the tram stop. What is the progress of this? I refer to Helen Swee to respond.
Thank you, Sam. Through the Mayor, The implementation of pedestrian-operated signals on Mount Alexander Road is the responsibility of the Department of Transport and Planning, and therefore, Council's role is to advocate to the state government on behalf of the community for this project. The department has previously advised that it receives many requests for infrastructure improvements across the network and are considered based on numerous factors, including the safety record of the road, volumes of different road users, nearby non-users, and the effectiveness of proposed treatments. Furthermore, the department has also confirmed that it will continue to consider this proposal as part of the ongoing planning in future budget processes. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Questions 4 and 5 are from Maureen Davin, who has indicated she will not be present to read her question as well. So on behalf of Maureen, why isn't there an Australian Day celebration in Moonee Ponds or book display at library? I refer to Helen Swee to respond.
Thank you for your question, Maureen. Through the Mayor, Council holds 2 events to mark Australia Day, a citizenship ceremony and a hailing ceremony. This year, both of these events were held in Moonee Ponds. Last Thursday, Council hosted a citizenship ceremony to welcome 120 new Australians to Moonee Valley. The ceremony was held at the Cocktail Centre in Moonee Ponds. Council also hosted a hailing ceremony on 26 January to respectfully acknowledge the pain and suffering experienced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Book displays at the libraries are generally dictated by the availability of titles, with a focus on new and popular books, as well as the current library programs featured in the What's On brochures. All library displays throughout January have been predominantly focused on the Summer Reading Club program, which aims to maintain or improve children's reading levels over the summer holidays, as well as the school holiday program of events. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And the final question from Maureen, in her words, are why on all emails and documents from Council and staff is there no Australian flag, and at every meeting, God Save the King as the head of Australia acknowledged? I refer to Helen Swee, the CEO, to respond.
Thank you for your question, Maureen. Through the Mayor, we are proud to fly the Australian flag at our facilities in line with the Australian flag protocol. Our emails and documents are designed to communicate specific messages about projects or initiatives that Council officers are working on or trying to promote within the community. Flags are sometimes incorporated in emails and documents to indicate relevance to a particular culture group or community. God Save the King is not a requirement at the opening of any meeting of local government. Moonee Valley City Council respectfully acknowledged the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in the meeting during the period of mourning and continues to acknowledge the sovereign as determined by the national protocol. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Item 8 is reports from delegates. Councillors, are there any reports from delegates? No? If not, we'll move on to our reports, item 9. And 9.1 is response to notice of motion number 2022/16, climate change contribution. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sypek.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That Council to note that there are 3 options for Council to consider. A, proceed with the creation of a Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve Contribution Fund.
Sorry, Councillor Sypek. I heard when you moved your motion that you're moving the officer's recommendation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, please continue.
Option A, proceed with the creation of a Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve Contribution Fund on Council's website, or B, proceed with the creation of a Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve Contribution Fund by setting up a GoFundMe page, web application page, and C, not to proceed with the creation of a Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve Contribution Fund.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This report has come from a notice of motion from Councillor Sypek last year. So I am happy to support the recommendation that he has put forward, which is the officer's recommendation. Councillor Sypek's motion from last year was endeavouring to set up a fund where our residents could contribute. I think there was a mention of $20 each at the time. It might even be, it's probably included in this report. Noting the complexities around that, obviously we have the officer's recommendation that we have here, but the idea from Councillor Sypek to put this up was certainly warranted, and something that at least I guess we have investigated. It was certainly a way to involve our residents in getting behind climate change initiatives, and being able to do that through committing $20, as it was mentioned. Although this recommendation is pretty much keeping the status quo that we have now, it was a good idea of yours, Councillor Sypek, and I think it was great that you did put it up at the time.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Yeah, look, I'll just briefly just wanted to clarify that as Councillor Sharp has just said, that the motion just retains the status quo. I do acknowledge that there's probably generated a little bit of discussion about these different options, and I probably just wanted to put on record that I'm probably most comfortable with C, which is, I guess, using our processes of tax to then distribute that revenue amongst our priorities, and climate change and addressing the climate emergency is one of those priorities. So I probably just wanted to make it clear that that would be my preference. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? As Councillor Isa has indicated a degree of discomfort with the motion, I'll give Councillor Sypek the right of reply to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm a little bit disappointed in this because it's only just noting and leaving the status quo. Now, we have $900,000 in our budget that comes out of ratepayers' money for climate change procedures here, and that is now mandatory. So when you pay your rates, you're donating $20, because we've had so many emails from the community requesting that Moonee Valley put $20 aside for each individual in Moonee Valley. Now, if we do that, that's mandatory where everyone has to pay that. And in today's environment, when the cost of living is going up, and we're actually making people pay it through their rates, 100%. No questions asked, you're paying that money. This, let me be very, very clear, this is a voluntary idea. It's not compulsory, and this will also gauge how much of our community supports these kind of projects. Now, $20, that's 4 cups of coffee. 4. And in today's environment, where CPI is over 7% now, imagine our rates going up by 7%. You think people are going to be happy that they knowing that this is going to go to the projects like this? I personally would like to give the option of ratepayers to pay $20 if they would like to, a contribution. And Mr Mayor, I'm happy to put the first $20 if it starts. At webpage, the number one donator will be Councillor John Sypek, and you can hold me to that, Mr Mayor. And can I get your approval for being the second one if it comes through?
I won't contribute to debate. Thank you, Councillor Sypek.
That's all right. Nah, it was just anyway. But look, once again, I want to be crystal clear. This is a voluntary idea. It's not compulsory. If you leave it for the budget process, it becomes compulsory and everyone has to pay regardless. Let's be smart about this. Let's give our community the opportunity to show their support for climate change.
Sorry, Councillor Sypek, your time has expired. Would you like an extension?
No, I think I'll just say it's voluntary. It's not revenue raising, it's voluntary.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. I will now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. On to item 9.2, naming of Boeing Reserve Oval number 4, Strathmore Heights. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Just like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. We are building the new junior baseball pitch at what is currently known as Boeing Reserve Oval 4 in Strathmore Heights. There has been consideration given to the fact that if there is an issue further down the track with somebody needing an ambulance or a fire engine or police, that having the oval name Boeing number 4 could cause significant issues and disruption. So the officers are putting to us that the proposed name to be endorsed for Boeing Reserve Oval 4 is the Chris Lane Field, and this motion is endorsing that proposed name for community engagement, upon which we will receive a report back following the community consultation. So I'm happy to support this motion as it stands and look forward to receiving the feedback after the consultation process has occurred.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully support this motion that Councillor Sharp has put up. I was here at the start of this when Chris Lane passed away, and I hope to be here when it's fully named and fully recognised, and hopefully you, Mr Mayor, will be opening up this new facility. I also want to acknowledge one person in particular, the president of the Essendon Baseball Club, Mr Tony Cornish. He has been a driving force, an absolute titan behind this, and I really would like to acknowledge him for what he's done and how he's proceeded with that, and I hope that he gets an invitation and gets a chance to speak when this field gets named the Chris Lane Field. Mr Mayor, this is a bit emotional for me. Like I said, I was there from the start, and I just hope this goes through, and I'm asking my colleagues to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So I think it is important that we obviously don't take the naming of council ovals or facilities lightly at all. Chris Lane was 2 weeks shy of his 23rd birthday, playing baseball over in the United States, and we know obviously the talent you have to go over and play US sport against the calibre of athletes there. He was just going for a run in the small town he was living, Dunklin, Oklahoma, and then was tragically murdered. So we really lost someone from our city who was no doubt a rising talent. It was just on 10 years ago, and you can imagine him as a 32-year-old now probably would have really taken the world by storm. So we don't take naming ovals facilities lightly at all. And as Councillor Sypek has indicated and Councillor Sharp, this is a very worthy naming project, and I'm glad that it will finally be rolled out 10 years after his tragic passing. And that way, although he hasn't made a name for himself because his life was cut short, his name will live on for decades and decades in this municipality, which I think is an all too small sort of gesture for us as a council to honour him and his memory.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other Councillor Adams?
Thanks, Mayor. I also just want to acknowledge what a wonderful project for Strathmore Heights and the Essendon Baseball Club this is, with many baseball fans in Moonee Valley excited to have a new field by hopefully mid-year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak? As there is no dissent to the motion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. On to item 9.3, review of Councillor Gift Policy 2022. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a review of our councillor gift policy. We had to review our policy within 6 months after election, which we did. However, there were some further questions regarding particularly gifts and hospitality around the chamber. So this policy, we've had further briefings and further information come to us. So based on that, this gift policy has been only very slightly amended, but it has been amended, and as such, we need to endorse that, and that's what we have here before us. And I'm happy to support those changes and the policy that is put up before us tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So the Local Government Act requires us to, within 6 months of our election, create and authorise a councillor gift policy. We did that on the 13th of April 2021. That's just some sticky tape in the background for those who are listening but don't have the full gallery
You need a break.
on the
Councillor
screen. No,
Nation.
that's fine. So we did that on the 13th of April 2021. It's been brought back because there needs to be some clarity on what constitutes a token gift and hospitality, and what is the threshold on offer of gifts, benefits and hospitality that needs to be declared. We also had a workshop on the 4th of October, my birthday. It's a great way to spend the birthday, where Maddox came in and gave us some advice as well. Sorry, I've just... Oh, sorry, Councillor Isa, did you... That's all right, sorry. I was seconding it for discussion because no one else put up their hand, but if people want to tweak further, I will leave that in the hands of the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to move amendments that I have circulated that were the amendments that came to the chamber last year. So I'd just like to move that point A include a point 1 that says the inclusion of an additional bullet point on page 15, raffle prize if an individual has not personally paid for the ticket, and 2 on page 16 change $200 to $150. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder for your amendment? Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I wasn't necessarily going to move these because I wasn't really sure what was going to happen with this particular item. It was deferred from last year. Last year, I did just put up these particular amendments, and Mayor, if I might ask if they might be able to be split and voted on separately, I'd be grateful. The first point is just that the specific mention of raffle prize has been removed from the bullet points, and in the debate last year we did clarify exactly where that was. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer that. And the second point was just that I'm uncomfortable with the $200 being the new policy says that reasonable hospitality, if something's $200, it can't be considered reasonable hospitality. I'm more comfortable with that being $150.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Isa. I moved to support Councillor Isa on this one, mainly because I support Part I, in that the additional information in relation to raffles. I don't actually support the change from 200 to 150. I suppose given in such an inflationary market in any case, it probably doesn't really make sense for us to be reducing that value when things are only going up, and that might preclude us from more events. That being said, I note Councillor Isa's reasons, and for that reason I'll also ask that this particular vote get split if possible.
Thanks, Councillor Bedio. I'll consider that. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Sorry, there's a lot going on. Can I just ask a point of clarification through you, Chair, potentially to the mover of the motion or the relevant person? The context of point 1. Can you just re-explain it? I'm sorry, there's a bit happening.
Councillor Isa, do you feel in a position to respond?
Yeah, look, that's fine. And I'm sorry, I think, Councillor Nation, you might have been absent when this came up. So I'm just finding, if it's okay, Mayor, I'm just finding the particular point in the, if I can just show that to Councillor Nation, it's, so it's a bullet point under that particular box that would just say raffle prize if an individual has not personally paid for the ticket. The previous version of the policy had that phrase in the body of the policy, so I've just taken that phrase and put it there to clarify, because it is slightly different to a door prize. And I was caught out at an event where I won the raffle, and I needed to refer to the policy to make sure I could accept the raffle prize, and I found it quite useful to have it explicit in there.
So can I just ask a follow-up?
Yep.
So if you have not purchased a raffle ticket, they draw a raffle, and you've won something,
Yes, that's
then that's a gift. You declare.
Correct.
Yep, cool. Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Councillor Nation, did you want to speak to the
No.
amendment? No? Would any other councillor like to speak to the proposed amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I wasn't sure about, I would support point I, and I wasn't sure about, point 2, the change from 200 to 150. We do get invited to attend, as part of our councillor duties, a lot of events, and some of them, particularly the larger annual fundraisers, tend to have ticket prices that probably include not only the cost recovery of running the event, but also an additional donation to whoever is organising the event. And I do think it's important in our role in community to attend those. So I wouldn't want to have anything to discourage councillors from undertaking that role in the community. However, I do see that, the threshold that we have, which is legislated in the Local Government Act of $500 worth of gifts, attracts this kind of question of how many events might you attend where the hospitality is considered unreasonable and meet that threshold. It's a bit of an arbitrary threshold, like we're offering in the gift policy some guidance. It's essentially the pub test, and I think in reflecting and looking at this, I do think 150 is a reasonable threshold to have there. Noting that if you accepted one or two invitations for events that were above $150, you wouldn't meet that $500 gift threshold, over a council term. So it does still allow councillors to attend annual fundraisers for clubs without fearing, getting close to that threshold. So for that reasons, I think I'll be in support of this amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Nobody else seemed to want it to, and that's fine because I support the officer's recommendation. I don't support changing the threshold from 200 to 150. Our clubs, we are representatives of our community. We get invited to a lot of events and we support the groups and organisations that invite us to those events. The difference, we're talking here between $50 and considering the status of where we are at the moment with the cost of things, I doubt very much whether any invitation we get is going to be under $150. Most events are between $150 and $200. I certainly don't want to be precluded from being able to attend an event in my capacity as councillor and support the group or organisation that has invited me. And I would encourage other councillors to at least think the same, because you're representatives just like I am and you get invited to things just like I do. And I think as a councillor group, we need to be very conscious of the fact that our community and our organisations need and want our support. And they are always extremely appreciative of when we do attend things because we are showing them our support. And I think that's really, really valuable. And more value would be put on that than $50. And I think we're arguing over something, well, not arguing, we're talking about something that really is, at the end of the day, quite insignificant. And we're representatives of the community and we need to be able to represent our community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Now, let's have a look at this. Let's get the $200 and let's break it down. Let's see what we get for our $200 if we go to an event. Now, most events that we go to, you're not going to eat $200 worth of food. You're not going to get entertainment worth $200 worth of food. At your local clubs, what you're actually really doing is you're probably getting a meal worth about $20 and the rest is going towards helping the club. Now, if you want to stop helping local clubs, well, then you vote for $50 or $100 threshold. But if anything, we should be raising this to $250 and helping our struggling supporting clubs. How many of these clubs would love to have a councillor there and just say a few words? How would they love to have the mayor there, and say a few words? Every club wants a mayor or a deputy mayor or a councillor. And you're supporting the clubs. It's not you're getting a freebie or you're getting, is money going in your pocket. This is going towards clubs, community groups. Imagine struggling little clubs that need your support. You're actually supporting them by buying tickets like this. I mean, these aren't like corporate boxes to the tennis or the MCG. These are supporting local clubs. Now, if you want to vote against that, well, then you're voting against the community and you're voting against helping local clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. It's been an interesting debate around the chamber, that's for sure. And I think that possibly something that's been lost along the lines is that this is the number to do with whether or not it's reasonable. It's not whether or not we can go, it's whether it will pass that reasonableness test. And I wasn't sure where I sat. Oh, sorry, I'm talking specifically about point 2 here. I wasn't exactly sure where I sat, and then a while ago I received an invitation to the Essendon Cricket Club's 150th celebration, which is at the MCG, not in a corporate box, but it is at the MCG, which for a cricket club is obviously something very special that they're holding, and the cost, and I believe, Mayor, you were invited as your capacity as Mayor, and I was invited as Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure who else was invited. And the cost of that ticket was $190. And as a result of not really knowing where this gift policy was going, and speaking with governance, I've declined it. Because it might not be classified as reasonable. Now, there's obviously other options which you could consider. We have an allowance of which we could pay for our ticket, but it all just becomes a little bit murky. I don't actually think it makes, we have to be responsible for our own actions and thinking, and where and when and where we go to events, and whether or not we think that it's reasonable. I would have thought, and I think that the majority of the community would think, that the Mayor attending the Essendon Cricket Club's 150th celebration, and probably taking part and hearing about the history would be reasonable. I would say that would pass it, but it wouldn't pass it because it would be over $150. So. Based on that and the recent experience that I've had in it, I won't be supporting point 2, I don't think, and point 1, that seems okay to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Adams, you're the only one on my list who hasn't spoken on this amendment. Thank you. I will give right of reply to Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne, for clarifying at the beginning of your comments that this is not about whether you can and can't go. It's not about whether you're supporting community or not. It's got nothing to do with that. It's whether or not it's declared. That's what the threshold is about. It's whether, because if it comes under reasonable hospitality, you don't declare it. Whether or not it's reasonable hospitality, you can still go. Whether or not it's reasonable hospitality, you still don't pay as a councillor. We're still getting it for free. This is whether or not it's declared, whether it's considered a gift and whether it's declared. And I think that our community's expectation is that if you went to a $190 lunch at the MCG for a big celebration, that it is worth that being declared by the Essendon Cricket Club, the gift being on behalf of the Essendon Cricket Club. The reason that it's worth declaring is because if you don't declare, the accumulation, which is what the Local Government Act turns on, which is the $500, if you don't declare it, the accumulation is harder for you to track, and it's harder for the community to track, and it's harder for governance to guide you on. So it's actually about protecting ourselves. If you went to 3 of those $190 events over the 5 years, you would still reach that $500 threshold because of the accumulation. This is about transparency and about accountability and about declaring the gifts that we receive. Reasonable hospitality falls down where it's repeated. So you can't repeatedly receive a gift and claim that that's reasonable hospitality. So that's why I'm erring on the side of caution for ourselves, so that we are keeping track of where we're receiving offers, invitations to attend things. And absolutely, as Councillor Hodgson said, it's about the pub test. This is about what... Have I reached time, have I? Could I just have 20 seconds to finish that thought?
You can finish your sentence.
This is about what the community expectations are about what we declare as a gift. And my view is that when we're getting to closer to $200, that is fine dining, that is lots of drinks, that is beyond community expectations.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. In considering the debate, I want to confer with council colleagues whether, if I split the motion into the top part of A and 1 and B for the first vote and part A2 for the second vote.
We're just voting on the amendment at this point.
Thank you. All right, so what we'll do is vote on the first part of A with the hook of the following amendments, plus point 1 in the first vote, and in the second vote, point 2. Sorry, governance, if you can just go back. So So are councillors understanding that?
Yep.
Can I just get a nod around the room to acknowledge that? Yep. So I'll put that first part to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. I'll put the second part to the vote. So to clarify, point A2 to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. All those against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nation. All those against? Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. I declare that second amendment part lost and the amendment carried. We'll now return to the substantive motion. Councillors, would any other councillor like to speak on the substantive motion? Councillor Isa, you can speak as you last moved an amendment, but you didn't speak.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, colleagues, for going through that debate. And I didn't mean to, I hope it didn't seem as though I was springing that. It was just, I wanted to revive the debate that we'd had on that from last year, and I just wasn't sure where things would go, and I just decided that it was worth putting up those amendments again. So thanks for talking through and those particular issues. It does raise a number of different things regarding our gifts. Look, where it stands at the moment, and I appreciate that inclusion of that bullet point too, I think that that's a helpful clarification. Where it stands at the moment is that I won't support the new gift policy, partly because of that, the $200 and $150 debate that we've just had, but also I'm just more comfortable and happier with the gift policy that we've got at the moment. And I'm saying that because in the interim period between when this came to us in December and now, coincidentally, the local government inspectorate released 4 sample gift policies. It did a policy review of a whole lot of different policies and released samples and guides of a whole lot of different policies, including gift policy. My preference would actually be that the LGI or LGV or someone just puts out a standard gift policy and all of the 79 councils across Victoria just adopt that policy, and because we're all held to the same rules under the Local Government Act. So it does seem a little bit silly that we're trying to tweak things for different, 79 different ways. That aside, these 4 different policies that the local government inspectorate put out are actually much closer to our existing policy, particularly in the areas that this policy seeks to change. And one of those things that this policy that we're changing tonight changes is whether or not we declare things under $50. Now, not one of these samples from the inspectorate said you don't have to declare anything under $50. 2 of those samples said declare everything, every offer, every declining, everything. This is about transparency. It's about everybody knowing protecting ourselves and protecting the organisation from any perception of wrongdoing or corruption. 2 of the, sorry, Mayor, I'm going to need just maybe 30 more seconds. 2 of those, one said $20 and one said $25, you don't have to declare. Then with respect to the limit, none of the policies had a limit of like that $200. So all of the policies pretty much said reasonable hospitality is subjective, but didn't come anywhere close to saying that $200 might be considered reasonable hospitality.
I'll provide an extra 15 seconds, Councillor Isa.
In fact, Mitchell's policy says that if the offer is for $250, you must decline it. So I think our existing policy is much closer to what the local government inspectorate has put out as sample policies.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And I'll just remind councillors that when returning to the substantive motion that Councillor Sharp has moved, Councillor Nation has seconded, Councillor Isa has spoken. Would any other councillor like to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Isa, for your comments. And just to touch on, I guess, my thoughts in relation to why councils have various gift policies and, in fact, why they exist at all. So for those at home or those following, all councils are bound by the Local Government Act. That was updated in 2020, and there's key stipulations there about what we can and can't accept as a council. But that being said, across the Council of Victoria, we're all quite diverse. As an inner-city council, with a large number of sporting clubs, with a high quite a mix, but pockets of high socio-economic activity in areas, I think it's reasonable that there may be circumstances where councillors, in fulfilling their job, are required to go to events that, in hospitality, might add up to about $200 or more, comparatively to some rural councils where that might not be the case, and why potentially their gift policies are a little bit more stringent and a little bit more controlled. But I think we need to look at the reality that in our roles, we are invited to a number of things, and I think that's one of the best parts of being a councillor, is that we get to be involved in the community. And my concern, and I've mentioned this a number of times in meetings, my concern when we look to apply more red tape around what we do is it actually disincentivises me personally from wanting to attend events. I'm legitimately quite concerned about whether councillors feel that moving forward they're not welcome at those events, or they fear of repercussions for attending events, because I know the community does value us being there. I also am concerned about the notion of having, like in Mitchell Shire's policy, if we were to declare any interaction, whether a cup of tea or a biscuit, which it's frequently offered to us when we go meet with constituents. I'm sure that's not the expectation, but if the gift policy is written in that way, then we're bound to that. I'm not saying that would be the expectation between councillors, but that is my concern. I don't want to put undue stress on councillors in performing their role. It's hard enough with the layers upon layers of regulation that we're bound to, and I understand rightfully so. But I think, that's the reason for me not wanting to change the gift policy from 200 to 150. So, but in any case, I'm pretty happy with. Can I an extra 15 seconds?
Yep.
I'm happy with what's been put forward in the current substantive, and I'd be happy to support it in its current form.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to talk a little bit about my man cave. In my man cave, I've got so much memorabilia there from the Collingwood Football Club. So when I go to clubs, and I go to a function that's like an annual ball that might be worth $150, $200, I probably spend 3 times as much, because I go to the silent auction and I spend $400 or $500 buying some Collingwood memorabilia. Come to my man cave and you'll see it all. I've 20 years I've done it for. So if I don't have the opportunity to go to these functions, I won't spend that money. Actually, you're probably doing me a favour, if anything. But we as councillors, this is what we do, and this is why these clubs have these functions, because it's a revenue raising, it's fundraising for these clubs. And by us eliminating ourselves out of it, this is a good opportunity for these clubs and the communities to meet us councillors and to also explain, some of their issues that they have. But I think, look at the big picture here. You're supporting local clubs and local groups. And if we don't go to these things, we won't support them. And we'll be just 9 people sitting on a horseshoe table making decisions and become invisible people. We can't do that. We can't become invisible. We have to be a part of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, a big part of the review of this policy again came, as Councillor Sharp I think mentioned, because there were questions coming to governance about implementation of the policy and help. We wanted to make sure we had a policy that really helped to guide councillors to understand the obligations, what was acceptable and what's not. And I think, we all want to make sure that we are out there attending things. Ticket prices, if we're expected to pay for tickets, are not a barrier to us going and performing our duties as a councillor, like Councillor Sypek's indicated. So, look, the gift policy is there to guide us to make sure that we are supported to comply with the legislative requirement that we have, which is the $500 capacity. And look, you're actually allowed to accept gifts over the value of $500 within a 5-year period. It just would create a conflict of interest for you with that, the offerer of those gifts. So it's not going to stop anyone from attending things. It is more just a Transparency Act. And I just wanted to note in the policy that we do still have for that, for token gifts or gifts under $50, which wouldn't appear, even if declared, wouldn't appear in the register according to this policy. The gift, it still has on page 7 of the policy that the gift should not be a regular occurrence. So if the gift is a regular occurrence and you start to, that accumulation starts to become a concern, in reading this policy the way it stands, that would no longer qualify as a token gift or hospitality, and it would, in my view and reading of the policy, trigger the need to declare that as a gift. So look, I'm comfortable that this is a more user-friendly version of the gift policy. I do note Councillor Isaa's, bringing up the Inspectorate's guidance on this at the moment, but I find this version of the gift policy to be more helpful for me in guiding how I'm being transparent about the way that offers made to me are recorded and accepted. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, and because there's been dissent to the substantive motion, I will ask Councillor Sharp whether she has a right of reply.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for your input. I think I'd like to clear just a couple of things up. There was mention in the debate that this is not a policy constraint whereby it stops us from going to events if we are invited. However, as we've heard from Councillor Byrne, who is the Deputy Mayor, she actually did decline an event because she wasn't too sure whether she should be going based on this policy. You should be going, Councillor Byrne, you're the Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Tyson, you should be going if you're invited because you are the Mayor. That's what our community wants. And I can't use the word expect, but they want to see us. They want to have council involvement. And I'm disappointed that, 2 invitations may have been declined because of fear of this policy, which is effectively what has actually happened. And I'd also like to clear up a statement made that a function worth $190 involves a lot of food and a lot of drinks. I think that invites incorrect dispersions upon us as councillors, and particularly the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, who have just mentioned that they were invited to an event worth $190. For me, that certainly doesn't conjure up lots of food and lots of drinks, because it's just wrong to even convey that. So I would like to take this opportunity to clear that up. That is not what we are about on this council. We are about representing our community and making good decisions. And I really wish we could get back to making decisions on important issues, because this really isn't one of them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I will put that substantive motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Byrne and Councillor Isa. I declare that motion carried. We now move on to item 9.4, Councillor Code of Conduct Review 2022. Before I ask for a mover and seconder, I'll remind councillors that under the Local Government Act, to pass a new Code of Conduct, a statutory majority is required, which is 6 affirmative votes in this case. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative motion that reads that Council resolves to A, further consider a revised Councillor Code of Conduct and the development of a standalone Councillor Charter, potentially transferring all or some of the Part 6 of the draft revised code, in brackets Attachment 1, in the new Charter, and B, request the CEO to bring the code and charter for adoption at a future council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Nation. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I do think that these issues are important for us to be debating, whether it's a gift policy or a code of conduct. I think they are important for us to get right, because the community depends on our good governance and our transparent and accountable governance, and these motions go to those issues. On this particular, given that, I mean, the Code of Conduct is quite a complex document. We're really setting up some standards of behaviour that we expect of ourselves and trying to get that right. And I don't think there's any shame in us spending a lot of time making sure that we all agree on that, and that there's consensus around the room on what standards are expected of us. And I think that, in fact, it's healthy, and the more debate that we put into this, the better document that we'll generate, and I think that stands us in good stead as a councillor team. So I think the fact that we want to talk about this some more, and also consider this notion of a charter, which is something that was recommended to us by an internal auditor, it does reflect on our willingness and our interest in really making sure that we behave as our community expect us to, so that we can govern the organisation appropriately. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I'm happy to second this motion. I think it's important to remember we've got quite a rigorous code of conduct that exists at the moment. And that doesn't prevent us from continually trying to tweak that and make it better, align to industry standards. And when we think we've devised a code of conduct that my mouth isn't working. When we think we've developed a code of conduct that is superior to our former one, then we sit around chambers and we move it and adopt it. So we have an existing code of conduct at the moment. That means there's no rush to create this new version. I think the good thing that will come out of this motion and doing some further work is getting a broad consensus across chambers, which, as you've mentioned, Mayor, is important because we need 6 of 9 to carry a new code of conduct. But ultimately, if everyone's putting their name on a code of conduct, you want it to be a unanimous vote, and it was obviously when we moved our first one, and then we all sign it. So the last thing we want as a councillor unit for the last 2 years of this term is for us to have a code of conduct that some councillors think is okay and some don't. So I think that this motion takes that next step for us all to look at the revised code of conduct, make some further tweaks. We've got a planning weekend coming up, which maybe will be the time to do that. I also think it's important, and that Part 6 reference in the motion, I also think it's important that our code of conduct is really rigorous, and it's basically like a set of rules. So if you breach anything in the code of conduct, there is a process to follow, and that's outlined in the code of conduct. The idea of a charter is a great idea because there are parts in that attachment before us tonight that if you breached it wouldn't technically be a breach of the code of conduct. And so hopefully when this comes back, we've got a really rigorous code of conduct that if you breach anything, that is a breach and there's a process to follow. And we've got a charter or best practices or whatever you might want to call it, which is us sitting around as a group of 9 councillors going, this is how we expect ourselves and each other to act within chambers, outside chambers, with our community, with constituents. And hopefully this motion is taking that next step, and then a code and charter will come back for us to adopt as a cohesive councillor unit. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? If not, and before... Sorry, Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to support this. However, I do want to have some vigorous investigations into the potential implications of a charter. I'm not 100% sure in principle whether I necessarily agree with the concept of a charter when it comes to councillor code of conduct. However, obviously this is something for further consideration, so I'll be happy to discuss with councillor colleagues and exec and officers over the coming weeks and months until this comes back to chambers to make a decision about.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? As no councillor has spoken against the motion. Councillor Bedio, would you describe your comments as dissent? Sorry. Would you describe your comments as dissent to the motion?
Not dissent, maybe a sense of unease.
In that case, because of the said unease, I'll ask Councillor Isa for a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I did just want to add some comments about the value or use or the purpose of a charter, given that Councillor Bedio has questioned that. Several councils do have charters, and they're seen as a statement of values that, or protocols often, that are slightly different to the code, because the code is wrapped up in that enforcement mechanism, and the charter. At some councils I've looked at, I've found a couple of charters, and one of them was specifically focused on staff and councillor interactions, and that was the key focus of the charter. So it might be that we come up with a charter that focuses on some of those things that apply to both councillors and might apply to organisation behaviour too, such as sexual harassment and discrimination or meeting protocols, some of those things that have been added into the Part 6, which is why I think that the Council Nation's suggestion of perhaps transferring some of those to the charter might work really well. So there is some differentiation between a code and a charter. They do serve slightly different purposes. We can craft that up to serve a purpose that we think is useful for us, and to perhaps fill in some of those gaps around protocols and values that our code doesn't necessarily capture. And thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to convey that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'll just, before I put this to the vote, clarify for councillors that supermajority that I mentioned earlier is not required with the proposed motion. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Sharp. I declare that motion carried. We now move on to item 10, notices of motion, and councillors, we have 5 listed on tonight's agenda. 1 is confidential and will be heard in the confidential section of tonight's meeting. As Councillor Isa and Councillor Nation have disclosed a conflict of interest, I'll ask them to leave the chamber. And I now call on Councillor Sypek to present his notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023/1 EV Charging Stations.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. But take note that at this meeting of Council to be held on the 31st of January, it is my intention to move that the Chief Executive Officer present a report to a future Council meeting that, point 1, evaluates the outcomes achieved at existing electric vehicle charging stations located at the Parade, Ascot Vale. 2, review the feasibility of expanding the cost-neutral electric vehicle charging station programs across the municipality, such as at examples A, the leisure centres, East Keilor Leisure Centre and the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre, B, sporting facilities, and just as an example, Canning Street, which is down by the Maribyrnong River, where you can have a lovely picnic and then charge your
Councillor
car.
Sypek, I'll ask you to read the
Sure.
motion as it's presented.
C, sporting precincts, East Keilor, Keilor Road, Nidri and Dinah Parade, and Keilor East, which was meant to be sent away.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Can I clarify those last few words were not part of the motion?
Yeah, not part of the motion.
Thank you. Councillors, do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Once again, these charging stations do come at a cost, and if one of my previous motions would have passed, we could have had this donated out of that fund, but we're going to have to go and ask the ratepayers. But look, I think this is a great project. Let's have a look at Henry Ford, right? When Henry Ford first built the gasoline vehicle, there were no petrol stations, and everyone had to go and get petrol, put it in the back of the T-model and take it home with them and fill their cans up with it. So we're at that infancy stage now with EV vehicles. And I can't afford one of them right now, so I don't have a conflict of interest. But I think this is a great thing for Moonee Valley. If we can get charging stations out there, we will be leaders. Just like when the gasoline car came out, when the first petrol stations came out. Imagine Moonee Valley having these charging stations in the area. I think this is a great idea. I think if we pick the spots for it, I think it'll be a good concept and it'll work very well.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the notice motion?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. Not much more to add other than to reaffirm Councillor Sypek's comments. I think given the inevitable move to electric vehicles in the coming years, it's something that we definitely need to get the ball rolling on. I guess I'm disappointed in a lot of ways that we aren't seeing more of this from upper tiers of government. There's still the question as to whether charging is going to become led by the private industry or be led by the public sector. But I think there is a real opportunity for councils to lead the way in EV charging. And to, I guess, break away from the mould of petrol stations is what we're used to with cars, and maybe set a new trend for locations, like you alluded to before, Councillor Sypek, where you can have a picnic while you wait for your car to charge. Is a little bit nicer than driving into the petrol station. So happy to support and look forward to this report coming back to council should it pass.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor, I will, and thanks, Councillor Sypek, for bringing this motion into the chamber. I would like to note that obviously the team behind the scenes at Moonee Valley is obviously doing a lot of work in this space. I'm not really sure who I'll direct this to, probably the Director of Strategy and Planning, but also Service Delivery, Director of Service Delivery maybe. I know that the teams are obviously working pretty hard in that space to ensure that we have the adequate supply of charging infrastructure, but it is one of those things that it is coming quite quickly, and that having something like this, a cost-neutral option, is really exciting. These obviously isn't an extensive list of where they can go, and I note your wording to say that these are options, but they are some really exciting options, and it will obviously, it's coming to Moonee Valley, and I was been down to the one at Ascot Vale, and I can't wait to see more and more pop up across our city as time goes on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. We'll ask Councillor Isa and Councillor Nation to return to the chamber. I might just raise with some of our directors that apparently the door outside is locked, which would prevent the public gallery from entering. On to item 10.2, and I call on Councillor Hodgson to present her notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023/02, Support for an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice to Parliament.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to A, support an alteration to the Australian Constitution that establishes the principle of an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. B, actively engage with Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders on how Council can support their aspirations for the voice to Parliament and how to best facilitate community conversations and promote understanding of the upcoming referendum. And C, request the CEO to prepare a report as soon as possible on options for Moonee Valley City Council to support efforts for constitutional change, including but not limited to advocacy, communications, and in-kind and/or financial support to inform our community on the upcoming referendum.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to start my remarks by adding my acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the lands and waterways on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and pay my respects to their ancestors, elders and community leaders and other Aboriginal leaders in Moonee Valley. In particular, I want to acknowledge and pay respect to the generations of elders who have tirelessly advocated for the rights of their families and peoples, and acknowledge that without their efforts and sacrifices, this is not a conversation we'd be having today necessarily. It brings me great pride to bring this motion to Council tonight as one of the first actions taken since we reaffirmed our commitment to Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people at the end of last year and endorsed our draft Reconciliation Action Plan, Buggaroo Buggaroo Jering, which means shoulder to shoulder together in Woiwurrung language. Later this year, the Australian public will be asked to answer a question about whether they support a change to our Australian Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. At its core, this question asks, do you support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to have a say in the policies that affect them? The commitment that we made at the end of last year is part of an ongoing commitment that we have with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and it supports this very principle. It promises to work with elders and the Aboriginal community to listen to their experiences and perspectives, to support shared decision making and consult as we work together to improve outcomes for the community. The principle is also consistent with MV 2040, which states that we will celebrate Wurundjeri Woiwurrung heritage and culture by supporting social justice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Our advocacy strategy also includes the commitment that we will advocate for increased opportunities and self-determination for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Tonight we have the chance to show our community, and in particular Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders and community members and other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Moonee Valley, that these commitments we've made are not just words, and that we're putting our words into action. In recent weeks, particularly surrounding Australia Day public holiday on January 26, which is also known as a day of mourning or survival day, conversations about the voice and constitutional referendum have gained momentum. This is being talked about more and more in newspapers and media, but also in our community around kitchen tables. This year, the referendum will ask the question of all Australians of whether we will take up the invitation issued in the Uluru Statement from the Heart and support the calls from Aboriginal leaders across the country to walk together with First Nations peoples and vote for constitutional recognition and establishing a voice to Parliament. At Moonee Valley, we have a strong relationship with traditional owners and elders in the community, and in considering what actions we can take as a council, we've asked our local elders for their views, and they've enthusiastically supported us bringing this motion to council. I see taking this step to support the call coming from Indigenous Australians as another step along our pathway of walking together with them. Some of the topics that are coming up in conversations about the voice are about the amount of detail that's available or the exact nature of what the voice might look like and what it will do. Will it really change things, or is it just symbolic? The inner workings of the voice are, in my view, a matter for Parliament and Aboriginal people to establish. That's what self-determination is. And to be clear, those conversations are well advanced. The government has the recommendations of the final report of the Indigenous Voice co-design process. The motion tonight that I'm putting forward doesn't ask us to support a particular model or suggest that one way of achieving self-determination is better than another. In fact, I don't think that as a non-Aboriginal person, it's appropriate for me to really weigh in on that discussion. Tonight's motion is an indication of support for the opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to determine that with the government, but to do so from an empowered position as constitutionally recognised as the first peoples of this country. Will it change things? Is it just lip service? Well, for me, the alternative is incomprehensible. That would be a perpetuation of a centuries-old broken system. A voice to Parliament is potentially a body with perspective that can offer the perspective, experience and a platform to tell the government and Parliament the truth about what's working and what's not. And we know through hundreds of years of trial and lots of error that giving people a say in the decisions that affect them is always more effective. Apologies, Mayor. I might ask for a minute's extension.
I'll provide you 30 seconds.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
Some people might also ask, is it the role of local government to be taking a position on this? For me, this is an issue that affects everyone in our community. Our statement of commitment recognises that we as a council have a unique connection to our community and a role in educating and supporting the sustainability of cultural heritage through use of language, events and celebrations and shared decision making. Every registered voter will be asked to vote on this, and I think we have a role in making sure our community has access to all the information they need to make an informed decision for their vote. The motion doesn't tell people to vote a certain way, it just offers support to our community to understand the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I don't have a lot, much more to add on top of Councillor Hodgson's comments, except to thank Councillor Hodgson for the work that you've put into putting this motion together, and that I wholeheartedly support and hope that my colleagues will support as well. We have a long way to come in this country as one of the only Commonwealth nations to not have a treaty or constitutional recognition for our First Peoples. And a voice to Parliament is, I think, the first most important step that we can make. A voice to Parliament will support further truth-telling and will support the hopeful deliberations around treaties for our First Nations people. And I think that we owe it to our community and we owe it to our First Nations people to show our support. So I hope councillors around the chamber today can support this important motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a very important issue, not only for Moonee Valley, but for Australia and for every person in Australia, every citizen, every voting person. But I just want to add, it is a very important issue, and I can see just from the community that it's a very important issue because we have two distinguished guests with us here in the gallery tonight, former Mayor and Councillor Jim Cusack and Yvonne Kernan, former Citizen of the Year. And I'm pretty sure that they're here for this item alone, am I correct? Yes. So for me, it is a very, very important decision. And I like the way you worded this, Councillor Hodgson, in principle, because we still don't really know what the wording's going to be, but I love the idea about having community consultation, and I love the idea about trying to inform the community. And that's what we as council do. We help people make informed decisions. And I think this has got a path, this has got somewhere to go, but if it's just in principle, that's fantastic, and I just would like to see the wording from the federal government, and then once we get that wording, I think this might snowball to a bigger and better and greater thing. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see some more notices of motion as this progresses and this grows. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa? Yep.
Thanks, Mayor. There's a really important phrase in our draft Reconciliation Action Plan that says, at the heart of reconciliation is giving a voice to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, embedding Aboriginal priorities across all our work, strengthening our relationships with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and building on practical actions to further our reconciliation journey. And I think it's that statement in our reconciliation plan that we're hopefully enacting in a very small way this evening in demonstrating our support for enshrining this principle of voice within the Constitution. At the heart of reconciliation is giving voice. And it's sometimes seems like a hard concept to sort of get your head around, and also get our head around the fact that our First Nations people in Australia haven't had that voice. And it's probably hard for us sitting around the table because we all have a voice. We're 9 people sitting around the chamber and we're privileged because we've got voice. And we're able to use that voice to represent our constituents. And what the Voice to Parliament is all about is extending that privilege of voice to the First Nations people of this land, the longest continuing culture on earth. It's embarrassing that that hasn't been part of our constitution till now, but that's what reconciliation and healing is about. It's not about, it's about acknowledging the pain and the shame that comes with that, but it's more than that. It's about acting on that and doing something to rectify it and improve it for the future. Like Councillor Hodgson, as a non-Aboriginal person, I do feel that some of this debate is not for me to debate. It's hopefully in supporting this and in speaking to this, hopefully I'm supporting and representing our Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders and being a portal for that through to our community. There's so much of this debate that is not ours. It belongs to our Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders and the First Nations people across Australia. We've got an excellent statement of commitment that we made in December. We've got our draft Reconciliation Action Plan. Those statements are full of our good intent, our intent to heal and to reconcile and be on a journey of shared reconciliation. We need to enact that and, as I say, hopefully this is a small part of doing that this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. I too would like to acknowledge former Mayor Jim Cusack in the gallery tonight, as well as Yvonne Kernan. As well, I'd like to acknowledge Wurundjeri Elder Auntie Diane Kerr, who wanted to join us tonight and unfortunately wasn't able to. Thank you. I now move on to item 10.3, and Councillor Adams has declared a conflict of interest, so I'll ask her to leave the chamber. I call on Councillor Sharp to present her notice of motion, titled Notice of Motion number 2023/03, Moonee Valley Nights.
Thank you, Mayor. Take notice at the meeting of Council. It is my intention to move to request that Council writes to Football Victoria supporting Moonee Valley Knights soccer team being promoted to Men's State League 4 North Division after being crowned champions of the Senior Men's State League Division 5 North Division in 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This is quite a simple notice of motion, really, but it is warranted in order to show the Moonee Valley Knights soccer team that council is supporting them in their endeavours. So in 2022, they were crowned champions of the Senior Men's State League Division 5 in the North Division. Upon being crowned champions, maybe a month or so later, they received advice from Football Victoria that they chose to act upon their discretionary powers in accordance with an order of merit system, and the Football Victoria have denied promotion to Moonee Valley Knights. So obviously, this one of the smaller teams in our municipality, having gained or being crowned champions, was a hugely uplifting and exciting time for them. However, that has been dispelled by the thought that they will not be promoted when they certainly did expect to be promoted. So it is something to do with the internal workings of Football Victoria, hence my request that Council writes to Football Victoria to show our support for them being promoted. And I thank you, Mayor, as you have assured me that the letter will go off tomorrow, because the fixtures are actually coming out on the weekend. So it really is imperative that Football Victoria understand our support of the team, and hopefully some good can come of it, because they've certainly worked hard over however many years they've, been after promotion. I think this is the first time in their entire history that they have been promoted. So it's really important to these guys and this team, and I thank the Mayor and my fellow councillors in advance for being able to support them in this endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp, and I'll clarify as well that obviously the motion has to pass for me to send that letter. But,
sorry.
Absolutely. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Okay, if this has a positive outcome and you do happen to write this letter, Mr Mayor, my mic is on. What I'd like you to consider in this letter is capitals, underline, and some bold wording in here, Mr Mayor, because this is a little bit unjust. And I hope you take my advice and present a very, very strong letter writing it to Football Victoria post haste. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and I'll remind councillors to avoid making reflections on the Mayor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And I'll now ask for Councillor Adams to rejoin us in the chamber. Welcome back, Councillor Adams. I'll now, for item 10.4, call on Councillor Byrne to present her notice of motion, titled Notice of Motion number 2023/04, Library Opening Hours and Service.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that the Chief Executive Officer present a report to a council meeting prior to August 2023 that details any time one or more of the 5 main City of Moonee Valley library sites have been closed since the 1st of July 2021, excluding public holidays and state government mandated COVID lockdowns. The report should also detail why the sites were closed.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll just clarify the additional word been after, in the third line, have. That was read out, been closed. Is that correct, Councillor Byrne? Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Just wanted to clarify that. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. This is obviously a notice of motion that just came about when I've been thinking over the holidays and reflecting on our library services. And I suppose I want to start by saying this to say that I love our library services, and I know that they are so loved within Moonee Valley, and I'm sure that most councillors and staff and community members also love our library services, so much so that I don't necessarily like to see them closed, and I know that a lot of our community members don't either. On reflecting on our library services, I've reflected on there's some things that seem to come into this chamber a lot, whether it's EV vehicles or whether it's sporting things, and whereas libraries don't really, and I don't necessarily think that our oversight on libraries is perhaps where it potentially could be, probably because everything goes along quite swimmingly. There's been a couple of times where the libraries have been closed, and it's not our job as councillors to decide when our libraries open and close. It's obviously very operational, and I'm more than happy to leave that to the CEO, and the Local Government Act says so. But it is our job to obviously look at the strategic direction in terms of which way we want things to head. We obviously have a council plan and documents related, and I think it's probably time that we just sort of open up the can of libraries a little bit, just to have a look at where we want our libraries to go. I wasn't really sure how this notice of motion would work initially, and I'd like to thank the Director of Service Delivery, who I was speaking to prior to his leave, and then the Manager of Arts, Culture and Place, and the Acting Director of Service Delivery when they were, when the Director of Service Delivery was on leave, that worked with me to help get words for the notice of motion, because the intention of this isn't to come back with a big complex report that we needed to have external advisors. A lot of this information apparently can be quite easily pulled and put together with a report, but what it will do, hopefully, if it gets approved, is potentially be that conversation starter in regards to our library on something that, as I mentioned before, I think that we're all very passionate in, and perhaps see where as a council we really want to see our libraries go. And so that is the intention of my notice of motion. Thanks,
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, and great job remembering all of those officers' titles. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll happily support this motion, and thanks to Councillor Byrne for bringing this to Council. I think absolutely it's our job as a council to look over the policies. While we don't actually set the operating hours for certain things such as our facilities, it's absolutely our job to listen to the community and help set strategic directions and policies that guide the operational directives. So I think this is a great idea, and I look forward to this report coming back, and I think potentially we could even open this up at some point to look at other strategic directions for our libraries, because I think that there's potentially so much more we could do with those spaces, given they're such a well-loved and well-utilised space. There's such a good space for connecting with residents and consulting with them. Thanks for bringing this forward, Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I guess I don't see the link between a report that details the hours of libraries opening and the strategic direction of libraries. So I just wonder whether I could move an amendment that moves it closer towards what it sounded as though I could hear Councillor Byrne discussing. Is it okay if I just try to word one and we can see if we need it then written down? Is that okay?
Are you able to move your amendment on the floor,
yes,
or do you require a
no, I think,
adjournment?
well, no, I think I can give it a go and we can just
Please do.
present a report to a council meeting prior to August 2023 that colon A details any time, and so all of that, and then B details the existing strategic direction of Moonee Valley Libraries and future considerations for council. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Yep, thank you, Governance. Very well done on the fly. Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second for debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess I'm just, in listening to what Councillor Byrne had put forward as her motion, if the intent of the motion is to really open a discussion on the strategic direction of libraries, I think that's a really valuable discussion to have. I guess I'm not sure that the original version of the motion really was pointing in that direction. The original motion is just asking for a report back on hours of closure, which I see as a very small part. If I don't really see the connection between the hours of libraries opening and a wider discussion on the strategic direction. So I'd be really interested in that discussion. I thank you for making the comments about how much we love our libraries. We absolutely do. And I do think that the issues of library comes to the chamber in quite some detail around budget time, where we're discussing the resources of our budgets, particularly the difference between the hard copy library collection and the electronic and the digital, and that does involve some discussion around strategic direction. So I would be really interested in examining what what the framework is that currently exists and how that can feed into our budget discussions. So I do want to open up that conversation. I just don't think that that Part A leads us in that direction.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I was interested in hearing debate on this amendment and to see whether, it's Councillor Byrne's prerogative, or obviously whether she contributes to debate, but to see whether that addition aligns with, the intention and comments made, which to me it looks like it does, and I'd be happy to see that included in a report that's coming. A report purely about operating hours, I think, points to me in the direction of ensuring that our libraries are meeting the needs and priorities of community in terms of service delivery, but it does venture into that operational area that we want to. I agree with Councillor Byrne that we want to be making sure that we're setting good strategic policy that means that our operational service delivery is delivering on those needs of the community. So at this stage, I'll still reserve consideration of the amendment and listen to debate. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. There was obviously, as I mentioned in my speech, there was obviously a fair bit of toing and throwing with the notice of motion with various people, because I acknowledge that our staff and our managers have a lot on their plate, and by having notices of motion that come back with reports obviously takes time and time out of other things that they need to do. And I suppose whilst I wanted to have a glimpse into what was going on to see whether it needed to be opened further, I suppose that's why the end result of what was presented was something that was fairly short, because I didn't think that it would take as much time. Now, in terms of if we as a council want the details of the existing strategic direction, I'm not sure how easily that will be able to be written as a report. Maybe, perhaps. I know that people are all over it, but, we'll then obviously be pulling on those existing resources. As I said, I don't have any issues with doing it. If that's what the council decides, I think one way or other, as long as something gets done in the libraries that we can have a bit of a better look, then so be it. But obviously there is that issue of I don't know, maybe our staff do have plenty of time to write reports. I'm not sure, but yeah. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can see both sides here. I can see what Councillor Byrne's trying to say, and I can see what Councillor Isa's trying to say. And I think this is a very, very good outcome for Councillor Byrne for bringing this notice of motion up. We still have the majority of what you're trying to do, and it's just been tweaked a little bit by what Councillor Isa said. So if I could, I'm happy to support both of you. And I think that's where we are here right now, where both of your ideas are actually amalgamated here. So hopefully this will proceed, and we'll be able to get a good report back on the back of Councillor Byrne's notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I ask a point of clarification, or maybe Councillor Byrne can just nod? Look, I'm supportive of what the mover of a notice of motion wants to get out of a notice of motion. Councillor Byrne, did you speak in favour of this or not?
Rude. Councillor Byrne, would you like to answer the point of clarification?
Well, I'm happy to listen to debate in regards to it. I suppose I was sort of just saying that it's going to pull from resources, but as long as something gets up in terms of a motion to do with libraries, yeah. I don't think it'll necessarily... I don't know, to be honest, is my response.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Nation,
Yes, that's right. I'm happy to support Councillor Byrne. She puts her hand.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Video.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, thinking about it a little bit more, I actually think there's a lot of merit in including Part B, mainly because Part A, the intention would be to come back with a report on, yes, we were closed on X, Y, Z days. Then the decision for us would be, okay, well, as a policy, do we want to, do we think it's worth closing on those days, and what triggers can we pull on to make sure, depending on what comes back in the report, if we want to maximise opening hours or whatnot. I feel like, though, that would then fall back on the strategic direction of the library. And I'm thinking about Yarra libraries. They've introduced the 24-hour library, so anyone can go in there if they've got a library card, and they can enter the library in the middle of the night if they want to. That wouldn't necessarily be something I believe we'd be able to tackle or look into from point A. I think we would need to look at more of a broader strategic direction. So I think in the interest of actually being able to implement change, should the report from Part A potentially, report on some deficits or deficits that we've identified, having the existing strategic directions presented to us and then having the data from point A would actually allow us to make a more informed decision. So I'm happy to support it as long as it doesn't necessarily delay, because I also want to support Councillor Byrne in this motion. I don't want it to cause any undue delay to the report. So potentially I'll have a question through you, Mayor, through to the manager.
A point of clarification?
A point of clarification, if I can, through to the Director for Service Delivery. Now, I know it's a notice of motion, so I know there can't be a firm answer, but do you, through you, Mayor, would it be reasonable to assume that the report would be able to come back in the same time frame should should the amendment pass in full?
I'll ask the CEO whether she or the Director of Service Delivery are in a position to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Service Delivery, are you comfortable to come to the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Matt. I'm confident the council officers can meet the timeline proposed in the notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harries. Has that satisfied your... Yep.
Thanks. With that being said, I'd be happy to support the amendment and the motion substantive should that pass.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio.
Sorry, can I just ask a point of clarification?
Councillor
I
Byrne?
think it can just be done by a nod. That was yes to the amendment. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak on the motion? No? Because of some ambiguous, I'll invite Councillor Isa for a right of reply if she would like. No? In that case, I will put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. We now return to the substantive motion, and Councillor Isa had the call.
Thanks very much, and thank you, colleagues, for supporting the amendment. I guess I was a little bit concerned about the narrow scope of the motion to begin with, so I'm very pleased that the report that will come back to us will bring us some further considerations. I just wanted to also say that I think, and Councillor Byrne did touch on this slightly when in opening the debate this evening. I think our libraries have had to have been closed for a number of reasons over the past few years, whether it's been COVID, maintenance, flooding, a whole range of maintenance issues. Poor old Flemington Library's been closed every time it pours down raining. I do think that our staff do an excellent job of managing those interruptions to our library access, and I do trust that our management team make the best decisions with all of the context around the summer holidays, the welfare of staff, patronage, and so I do want to make sure that we're not seen to be critical of or meddling in those management decisions, because I think our team does an excellent job. And Councillor Betty, I'd also just thank you for mentioning before about the 24-hour access. I do know that is something that I think we are looking into at Moonee Valley, and so that might be able to help with any concerns about that service provision. Our e-collection, our digital collection also does help with that. But all of these issues can be brought to us now in the report.
Isa, your time has expired due to a continuation from the previous comments. However, I'll give you an extra 30 seconds.
That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Just really briefly, it's been a great debate, and I think I agree with the comments made around the table. The libraries are very well loved, and it's often the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. Have I got that right? Yeah. I'm not mixing my metaphors. And the libraries are not a squeaky wheel, so it's a good thought, Councillor Byrne, to bring this to us so that we can have a look and see how we can improve what is already a great service.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, sorry, just a second, I'll just confer with governance. I will invite Councillor Byrne to close if she would like.
Thanks, I will. And look, I'm happy where this notice of motion have ended up. Like, if I knew that councillors wanted something bigger for libraries, I would have proposed a bigger library nom. If I knew that there was capacity within the Service Delivery Directorate to produce bigger reports, great, let's go. Be really interesting to see what comes back if we end up having 24-hour libraries or whatnot. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the report. Well, assuming it gets up, we will see see how we go in this space. And thank you also to the library over the summer break who did the summer reading program and the big summer read. I think it was a great program, and well done to all of the staff who coordinated that, even though we did shut our doors for a period of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move on to urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? If not, I will now move on to confidential reports, and we have one listed on the agenda this evening.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to step out of the chamber as I declared a material conflict of interest earlier in the night. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Item 12.1, Notice of Motion number 2023/05, Property Matters. Item 12.1 is considered confidential under the terms of Section 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020, as they contain information relating to A, council business, information being information that would prejudice council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, as the item relates to possible property acquisition. Councillors, I need a motion that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the aforementioned items. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Sypek. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. This is where we say goodnight to the members of the public who are watching and in the live gallery. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.